What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we just finished up watching the brand new Campfire Chat here for the PTR server that was announced in the previous Campfire Chat, and man, there was a ton of brand new information all regarding all of the updates coming for Season 4, and it didn't even include the Season 4 mechanic that's going to be launching with the season. It was just changes to the base game, guys, and man, there is a ton of stuff here. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So starting off here with the PTR, they did say that we're only going to be getting the PTR for 1 week, and that's going to be from April the 2nd to April the 9th. So we will have a rather small time frame there to test out all the new content coming to the game for Season 4, and then to give them our feedback with any changes we think they need to make. Now, with that being said, they did say they're going to be pushing back the launch of Season 4 for 1 month. So the new date for Season 4 is going to be May the 14th. Now, it was April the 16th, but this is going to be updated and it's going to be pushed back to May the 14th. Now, initially, I was a little bit upset about this. I really do have problems with Season 3. However, with all the updates they announced, I'm actually really happy that they're taking the time to make sure that they nail Season 4 perfectly, so that way we can have a smooth transition from Season 3 into Season 4. So with all that being said, the PTR server will be a brand new server for characters, so you will have to have a brand new character to participate in the PTR server. You will also have to be on the PC side as well as go through the Battle.net launcher, and there's going to be more information about how we access the PTR server when they release the official patch notes next week. However, we will get to be instantly boosted to level 100. We're going to be getting 100 million gold as well as 1,000 obols, as well as we're going to have access to our mount immediately and all of our skill points and any Paragon points you've already gathered from all your other characters. So all of your player progression for a brand new character is going to transfer over to the PTR server. You're just going to have to start out with a brand new character and farm up all of your items. However, they also stated that they will be increasing the legendary drop rates, so that way we'll be able to get our hands on a lot of those items that are going to be changed pretty dramatically for Season 4. So it doesn't seem like there's going to be many issues with making a new character and getting that character to the point where you can test out the in-game content. And as you can see here on the second slide, it just restates what I've already said. Your Paragon points are going to be there. The Fog of War is going to be completely cleared. All of your Altar of Lilith points are going to be already unlocked. And also a really nice one, all of your Paragon glyphs are going to be unlocked and automatically at max level. Going forward to the next slide, this is just a small breakdown of how the Campfire Chat played out. So they talked about base items, additional updates, Codex of Power updates, tempering, greater affixes, and masterworking. So one of the best changes they're making to the game is they're creating a smaller pool of much more relevant and much more potent affixes that we're going to have on our gear, instead of a lot of these really useless affixes that no one really utilizes. Also, they went further to say that we're no longer going to be getting items for the previous world tier we were in, so we're always going to get sacred items in world tier 3, and then we're always going to get ancestral items in world tier 4. Now, as you can see here on this slide, guys, this is just an example of how they improve the affixes for your gear pieces. So you can see here, normally your intelligence would be 38 to 52. Over here in Season 4, it's going to be 70 to 84. And then the same with your damage rolls or your vulnerable rolls. You see here, vulnerable 12.5 to 19.5%. Now it's going to be 30 to 40%. So massive changes for the affix rolls, as well as you can see the floor and ceiling of the affix rolls are much closer together than previously with our Season 3 items. Also, I want you to take note here, it says that all legendary items will roll with 3 affixes and all rare items will roll with 2 affixes. So rare items now in Season 4 will pretty much be irrelevant, and all you're going to be looking for are legendary items, and we'll expand more on that as we get into the video. However, I know it's been said that they do have plans for your rare items in the future, but for Season 4, legendary items is going to be the key in terms of farming that in-game gear. And again, on this slide, just another example, you can see the intelligence, the damage, the vulnerable affixes, all significantly higher than the previous season version. Some additional updates that are actually really important and impactful here. So we're now going to get 925 item power gear for monsters that are 95 plus leveled. So pretty much every monster you kill by the time you reach level 100 is going to give you 925 item power gear. On top of that, they are going to be reworking the gem bonuses. So they did state that they're probably just going to give certain gems crit damage or vulnerable damage, as well as some gems will add flat stats to your characters now. and they will scale higher into the end game and be more impactful for your character overall. Also, as you can see here, one of the bigger ones, item rerolling gold cost will be capped. Now, they did not mention what that cap was, but they did say we're no longer going to be spending hundreds of millions of gold just to roll an affix on our gear. And another big one for me, Forgotten Souls can now be obtained from Whispers as well as rare drops globally from Elite. So massive quality of life change. Definitely won't have to just simply farm Hell Tides all the time for Forgotten Souls, even though they've made some significant changes to Hell Tides to make them much more fun to farm. They also said there will be more uniques available to the player from World Tier 1 and Tier 2, and that all uniques can now drop in World Tier 3. Something I also thought was pretty cool is now you will also be able to get Uber uniques from monsters level 55, and as we already know, Uber uniques always drop at 925, so there is a chance that even as a low-level character, you can possibly get one of the best items in the game. Now, stopping here, I also wanted to mention that Joe Shelley did post out on X that all of the in-game bosses will have a chance to drop Uber uniques, so you'll no longer only have to depend on Duriel to get your Uber uniques, and we'll also expand on that a little bit more later on in the video. Now we're going to talk about one of the coolest parts of the Campfire Chat, and that is the Codex Changes. So as you can see here, we have a new Codex system that is going to be in play for Season 4, and you no longer have to go to the Occultist to actually pull your aspects off of your gear. All you have to do is simply salvage a legendary item with the aspect that you want, and that aspect will automatically go into your codex. Now, how this is going to work is that every time you find an aspect that is of higher value than what you currently have in your codex, you simply salvage that piece of gear at the blacksmith, and that specific aspect will then be updated in your codex to the higher value that you had on that legendary item. Now, they did say there will be some caps in play from tier 1, 2, and 3, but by the time you reach tier 4, if you do find a max rolled aspect and you salvage that, it will automatically update your codex with the max roll on that aspect, and you can then equip that aspect at any point in time on any piece of gear that's viable for that aspect, and you will automatically have access to the maximum roll of that specific aspect for your character. Something else to mention here that they did mention in the Q&A is that these aspects will be available across all of your characters you create for Season 4, and the only separation is going to be your softcore characters and your hardcore characters. So if you do plan on playing both softcore and hardcore, you will in fact still have to acquire those same aspects for those characters. However, if you only plan on playing softcore or hardcore, you only have to acquire those aspects one time, and then you will have it available for all of your characters you create throughout the entire season. Now, this in my opinion is one of the biggest highlights from the Campfire Chat. We're now going to have a lot more free space in our inventory as well as our stash, so we no longer have to pollute those things with saved up aspects. And it also makes creating multiple characters that much easier, because now you're going to have access to a lot of the better aspects for your characters, so you can get your builds online much earlier with your brand new characters. Then they talked about tempering, which is one of the brand new crafting systems coming to Diablo 4 for Season 4 and beyond. And what this is basically a brand new way to add more affixes to your gear, so you can really fine tune your builds on whatever class you decide to play. And how this is going to be implemented is that you're going to acquire manuals from doing pretty much all of the content in the game, and these manuals will then come with specific affixes that you can apply to your items. Now, as you can see here on this slide, there are a lot of brand new affixes being implemented into the game, and a lot of them are very transformative for your skills. So just going over these two, you can see we have an example of a mobility manual that applies to boots and amulets, and here you can possibly apply more movement speed after killing an elite, or even get this brand new affix, mobility cooldown reduction and evade cooldown reduction. Now, mobility cooldown reduction is actually going to apply to skills that you have on your character that are now going to be labeled mobility skills. So for me, I personally like to play a druid, and so what that probably means for me is that Trample's cooldown will now probably be affected by mobility cooldown reduction. So if I wanted to get a really low cooldown on my Trample, I would then just apply that to my boot or amulet, and I would further reduce the cooldown of Trample. Then going into the second manual, and this is another really big highlight from the Campfire Chat, as you can see here, they have added affixes to the game that actually affect your skills directly. And I think this is is one of the biggest changes to the game, and it really adds that transformative nature to some of your skills that I think the game is actually lacking, and is going to actually add some build complexity to the game that is definitely much needed. So just looking at this first affix here that you can possibly get on your weapon, you have a chance to cast Bone Splinters twice. The second one says you have a chance to actually cast Bone Spear twice. The third one here says Bone Spirit now has a larger explosion size, and then the very last one says Bone Storm is increased in duration. So this one I think is really amazing and a much needed change to the game. Adding ways to affect your skills through your builds, whether it be from your skill tree, your Paragon board, or your affixes, is definitely something I hope they continue to expand upon, and I think this is a massive step in the right direction. So I do expect to see a lot more build variety in Season 4, as well as a lot more complexity in terms of build creation. And this is just an example of how it works. So you can see here we have just an ancestral legendary amulet with 3 affixes we like. We throw it into our tempering system at the blacksmith, to which we have multiple chances to actually imprint those affixes on our gear piece. We then select from the affix pools that are available for this specific gear piece, and as you can see here, they were able to get charge cooldown reduction, as well as damage while berserking on their amulet. Now, obviously, there are going to be a lot of different affixes to choose from, but I do think it's very nice that they managed to compartmentalize all these affixes into different categories, so that way we can limit which ones we're choosing from and actually get the affix we want on our gear piece much easier. Now, on to some of the item drop changes they've made. So now there's going to be a chance to get greater affixes on our gear pieces, which are going to roll at max roll and are going to roll at a 1.5 times multiplier on that specific affix for the item. And obviously this is intended to make the gear chase a lot more interesting and exciting for the player. Also, something to mention is that these greater affixes are actually going to be available for unique items as well as uber unique items. So there is a chance that you'll be able to get a better uber unique than what you were able to get from previous seasons. Also, something to mention here is that we'll also have the ability to trade legendaries as well as unique items for Season 4. Now, something that I thought was actually really nice that they did is that when you do get one of these greater affix rolls to drop, that piece of gear actually looks different than your other legendary gear pieces. So now you can actually tell when you get a really great piece of gear, and that will kind of help limit the amount of gear that you actually pick up in the game, so you won't have to sift through so many pieces of gear when you're looking for that perfect in-game gear piece. Now, I know everybody was hoping for a loot filter for Season 4. However, this will act like a simple loot filter. It may not select for specific affixes you're looking for, but it will allow you to know when you get a greater affix roll drop on your gear piece, so you'll only be targeting those items, and you're not going to get them all of the time, so you probably won't have to pick up too many items and actually look at them to determine if it's an upgrade for your build or just something you scrap at the blacksmith. And then here is just an example of what that actually looks like on a gear piece. So as you can see here, on a normal legendary item, we still have really decent affix rolls, but when you do get a greater affix roll, you can see that it not only rolls at the maximum value, but is a massive 1.5 times the value of the max value of that item. So our dexterity was 70 to 84, and now it is 126. Our crit damage was 40 to 50%, and now it is a massive 75% crit damage. So in my opinion, this is going to be the big gear chase for Diablo 4. You're going to be looking for those greater roll affixes, especially on your weapons. And then from there, you're going to be engaging in some of the crafting systems they're implementing into Season 4. Speaking of the crafting systems, now we're getting into the Masterworking system. So this is basically the upgrade system that is currently in the game, except now they're adding more ranks to it. So up to 12 times you can upgrade an item, and they're also going to be adding a massive increase to a single affix every 4 ranks of your Masterworking upgrades for your items. Now here they're just showing us an example of how this Masterworking system actually functions. So as you can see here, they're using max life as an example. So every time you rank your gear piece up, you will still get that standard increase to all of the affixes on the gear piece. However, at ranks 4, 8, and 12, we're going to get a sizable increase to a randomly selected affix on our gear. So we're using max life in this example. So at rank 2 to 3, we get that small increase, but at 3 to 4, we get a much larger increase to that maximum life affix roll. So this is a pretty cool system and another way to really gear up your character for the end game. And there's already a lot of talk as to what is the best way you could possibly utilize this system to improve your overall player power going into the end game, but you better believe we're going to have to actually get our hands on this before we can actually make a definitive choice as to what we should be doing before we either masterwork or decide to temper our gear piece. After that, they started to talk about hardcore updates as well as how they're going to be balancing the game for Season 4. And a lot of those changes are still ongoing, and you're probably going to see a big change once players actually get into the content and can give the developers feedback as to how the overall game balance feels going into Season 4. Now, in my opinion, I think there is going to be a significant increase into the overall difficulty of the game. So I think it's very important that as many players as possible play on the PTR, so that way we can give the developers enough feedback, so that way when they do end up finalizing the game's difficulty, that it's not too far out of reach for the casual player, but it's not so easy that you can pretty much breeze through all the content without actually having to gear up, which is pretty much where we're at currently in the game as it stands now. Now, this is just showcasing one of the brand new Uber uniques coming to the game. However, I did want to highlight some of the things the developers said when they were going over this specific unique. So they did state that a lot of these damage reduction affix rolls are going to be much more rare in terms of acquiring them on your gear pieces than they currently are. So do expect it to be a lot harder for you to build up that massive amount of damage reduction, so that way your characters can tank through all the content without worrying about dying. So again, I do think there's going to be a significant increase in difficulty, and if you don't tune your character appropriately, you're probably going to have a hard time getting into the in-game content. Then they started to go over some of the class balancing choices they decided to make, but it was a very small segment of a much larger set of patch notes that are coming next week. So I'm not really going to get into detail with this because they really couldn't get into detail with it on the stream. So just be aware there are a lot of class balancing changes coming to the game, and that next week we're going to be getting the official patch notes, which I will be covering on my channel. So do be on the lookout for that video. Now, regarding hardcore, they are going to be removing the Elixir of Death evasion, which is something that a lot of people have been asking for since the game is launched, because that elixir made the game a lot easier to play in hardcore and pretty much gave you a constant get out of jail free card, so you never really had to worry about dying on hardcore. Also, you can see here they did make some changes to some class specific skills to make hardcore more difficult for some of the other classes. So you can see here for the sorcerer, they decided to remove the automatic proc of flame shield when you take fatal damage, and instead make it proc when you take a cumulative loss of 100% maximum life. And they also went ahead and reduced the cooldown on that to 30 seconds instead of 120 seconds to alleviate some of the pain of losing that flame shield when you take fatal damage. Then they talked about Hell Tides, and I thought this was a great change they're bringing to the game. So they're actually adding a lot more mob density to the Hell Tides, which I think is amazing for Hell Tides. And we're also going to be getting a lot more ambushes and dynamic monster spawns as well. They're also adding more summoning material drops from killing certain things in Hell Tides, as well as around the world in general. And something I thought that was really cool is that they're adding a Blood Maiden public event boss. So that's going to really help bring players together during a Hell Tide and really help breathe some life back into Hell Tides, because man, I'm going to tell you what, it is a pain in the neck to farm those things, and I'm definitely happy that they're adding more stuff to it to help refresh that specific system. Also, they stated they are going to be adding the Andario Boss into the game, and they're going to be giving Andario the same drop table as Duriel, so that will give us a second boss we can then kill for a higher chance to drop Uber uniques. Now, as I stated previously, Joe Shelley did post out on X that all of the bosses are going to have a chance to drop Uber uniques, but Andario and Duriel will have the greater chance to drop those Uber uniques, so you're still probably going to want to farm those bosses for the majority of your time looking for your Uber uniques. And then for the largest update to the Campfire Chat, they talked about the brand new in-game content called The Pit, which is going to drop Stygian stones that will help us summon Uber bosses. So level 200 bosses are going to be able to be summoned with those Stygian stones, and then utilize our powerful in-game builds to slay these bosses for a big reward, which it was stated that when you do kill one of these bosses for the first time, you will receive a resplendent spark for doing so. But that really wraps up everything they talked about in the Campfire Chat, guys. There's a lot of brand new systems coming to Diablo 4 for Season 4. They did not even talk about the seasonal mechanic for Season 4, so there is still a lot more information coming. The PTR will be coming out on April the 2nd to April the 9th, so do be on the lookout for that. And the official patch notes for this Campfire Chat will be coming next week with with information on how to access the PTR server. Now, with that being said, unfortunately, they did have to push back the release of Season 4 for 1 month. So the new season release date is going to be May 14th. However, that will give them more time to polish out Season 4 as well as make any significant changes to that content based on the feedback we give them from the PTR server. Now, with all that being said, I want to say that I am incredibly excited, and they really knocked this one out of the park. And if they nail Season 4 with all of these changes, it is going to be a massive step in the right direction for Diablo 4. And I think it's going to go a long way in breathing life back into the game and generating a lot more interest in Diablo 4 going forward. Now, as always, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Did you enjoy this Campfire Chat as much as I did? Are you excited for Season 4? What do you wish they would have added into Season 4? What were you surprised that they actually announced for Season 4? But anyways, guys, as always, I hope you guys are having a great day or a great night, depending on wherever you're from. And peace out, guys. I will see you in the next one.